right. So this is a good. I hope that last one helped, but this is a good one. Okay. So the idea here is the question came up this week, or I shouldn't say it was a question, it was a debate that I kind of got caught in. It's funny because those of us that were watching the debate, it was like Joel and his wife arguing on Facebook in front of the world. But I'm excited to talk about this because this is something that I actually went through personally. Growing up in Massachusetts, my parents put me in private school in like fifth grade, and I went to Derby Academy from fifth, sixth, and seventh grade, and then in eighth grade I transferred to Thayer Academy, and it was so I played lacrosse at Derby, and then I went to Thayer, and my dad was the music director there, and but I loved lacrosse, and I was a good lacrosse goalie, and Thayer was not really giving me what I wanted like I didn't have a coach who was supportive and really wanted to help me get recruited and things like that. And I got recruited somewhat by a coach at another school in the independent school league called Lawrence Academy. And I went after my grade 11 year at Thayer, and I repeated my junior year, my grade 11 year. And so I didn't PG a year. So I didn't post grad a year. I actually repeated grade 11. Okay. And there's different rules to that. There's different options to that. Like the different things can kind of happen in terms of recruiting and so that's something to consider. But what I wanted to start this discussion. Oh, I got to get my face up here. I wanted to start this discussion talking about this strictly from a athletic development standpoint, and having an athlete ready to go when they step on campus their freshman year of college. Okay. So living in Canada, just as an example, I can tell you that in Canada, they start their kids, like we start our kids a year younger than our American counterparts in school. Okay. So a question that I always ask my families when they have an athlete and they say like, oh, I want my athlete to go to college, play lacrosse in college. One of the questions I ask is like, what month is your goalie born in? All right. And if they tell me that they're born in December, or November, they're late. They're young. They're going to be young for college, and they're probably young for the age group they're playing in now. Okay. So when they step on a college campus, they're going to be young. Now, something to consider is that if you were going to design an athlete, right? Think about it this way. It doesn't matter what the sport. Just step back for a minute and go, all right, I'm designing an athlete that's going to play a sport in college. Some of the things you would consider is you would look at the competition they're going to be up against when they step on campus. Okay. So, or you would say maybe they're not going to start freshman, sophomore year, but let's say you're getting them ready to be ready junior year. Okay. Either way, you would, let's say you're going to design an athlete and you're like, okay, I want that athlete that has the best chance to succeed when they step on campus. So you look at the three key abilities of an athlete: their physical, their technical, and their tactical ability, and you go backwards from there. So with their physical ability, all right, the more time an athlete has to train, right? The more time an athlete has to train, then the better off they will be. The bigger, faster, stronger they will be when they actually finally have to compete. Okay. So that's physical ability. Same thing goes for technical ability. The more time an athlete has to train, the more reps an athlete sees, the more chances that athlete has to train physically, in strength, in a weight room, or individual reps. Like for lacrosse goalies, we're talking about balls shot and game scenarios and things like that. Learning the language of lacrosse. Okay, I want to delay that as long as possible. I want as much information going into my athlete as possible, because when it comes to training athletes, train, recover, compete, recover, repeat. The more chances we have to train, the faster we can recover. The more chances we have to train, the more exposure we get to learning the language of the sport, and then we get to compete. Okay, so we want reps, and we want as many of those things as possible. Tactically, this is what's kind of interesting for goalies. is because we are learning the language of lacrosse, but the tactical parts of the game that we need to learn are not as um, it's not as complicated, right, as a player out in the field. All right, so that's something to consider as well. Is that this is why goalies can come from non-hotbeds and succeed. So, like for example, we had a comment in the group this week, a goalie from South Dakota, right? Not a lot of lacrosse there, but I'm like, dang it, there's a lot of kids that, of all the positions in the sport who can have a long lifespan in the sport, it's a goalie from South Dakota. Okay. So you got to keep that in mind. So then the question is like, well, how do we do that? Where do we do that? And this is where, in my model, the first layer that goes around the three key abilities, physical, technical, tactical, the first layer that goes around that is resources. Okay. And what resources? Time, energy, money. All right. Time, energy, money. So when you think about that, all right, I have entrepreneurial households that look at the money piece and go, well, we just got to sell more stuff. Okay. I have families that are employees and salaries are fixed, and they don't even think like that. Okay. They think like, okay, we're already tapped out. We can't do more, whatever. And so what ends up happening is you can see the difference in mindset potentially in poo-pooing and poo-poo is a technical term, and poo-pooing even the idea of going to a private school. All right. Or even a travel team or things along those lines. Then you have people who have like limited, their beliefs about things are very limiting and restricting. Their past experiences or who they know can affect their thinking on what they would do with the resources that they have: time, energy, money. So then the question goes then down to like, okay, where do we get the best lacrosse experience? Where do we get the most reps? Where are we going to get that knowledge to build the physical, technical, tactical abilities? And so this is going to be very dependent on where you live, because in some areas of the country, the public school lacrosse experience is more robust. There's more athlete inventory than in the private school realm. However, in some places, the opposite is true. Okay. So the idea then is like, well, what do you pick and where do you go? Well, if we rewind a little bit and talk about age, right? Chronological age. This is where the concept of reclassifying comes into play. Okay. So in Canada, we use the term reclassify a lot because like kids are young, they go down to an event and they're going to reclassify them. So let's say they're a 2021 grad year, but they're going to take an extra year. Like, so what's very popular, not popular, I shouldn't say popular at all. Actually, it's limited to people who think about it and then have the resources to do it, or they find the schools that help with the scholarships to make it happen. But a Canadian kid will go down, like they'll do 3 years of high school up here where lacrosse is not part of school. They're playing like box lacrosse, some fields. Then they'll go down to a prep school in the States for 2 years. Now, like for example, a Canadian kid could go to an independent school league in Massachusetts, like Governors, Lawrence Academy, Thayer Academy, schools like that, and they'll go down and if they do it early enough, they'll repeat their grade 11 year. And because those independent schools, those ISL schools, will take them for 2 years, they won't take them for 1. That's an ISL rule, just as an example. But there's schools in like New York, where they'll take a kid for a PG year and just do it's like grade 13. Whereas the ISL schools will take you for grade 11, 12, like grade 11 again, 12. And those other schools will take like Deerfield, Choate, Rosemary Hall, schools like that. They'll take you for 1. But then you got to decide like, well, what are we paying for? All right. What are we paying for there? Are we paying for more exposure? Are we paying for more reps, higher quality reps? Well, if you're going to send your kid to a private school and they play like fall lacrosse and they play like they play games, well, there you go. because your public schools aren't doing that, right? If they have like a lacrosse, uh, if they got weight programs and they really like they travel, like the Hill Academy, for example, in Canada, in Ontario. I mean, people are paying a ridiculous amount of money for a private school education. Is the education better than the public school education? That's up for debate. Like, it depends on what type of student your kid is. If your kid's trying to be an athlete and play a sport in college, well, I've seen, and this is always interesting. I've worked with athletes who are busting their ass academically at a private school, and they're up against a kid breezing through a public school. They end up with the same SAT score, because I've not seen private school kids get better SATs than public school kids. It's just been my experience, right? So the idea is like, what doors are we opening? Is my kid just gonna be able to? And I think this is like, so SAT scores. And there's some research on this. Like, SAT scores are just basically a simplified like IQ test, right? And that's something to consider. That's why a lot of, like, finance companies, like, they just look at the Ivies, because they know the SAT scores are ridiculously high, and that the kid that got in the Ivy had the high SAT. They've got a high IQ. They're most likely going to figure in well in that company, because a high IQ leads to success there. And that's, you can just do a little debate, like, you just do a little digging on IQ and SAT and things like that, and whatever. It's a contentious topic, but the truth is that it's there. So the question is like, okay, what are we getting out of this? The Is the public school education better than the private school education? Again, it depends. Like, and I said that deliberately, public versus private, because the question is like, well, is this going to give us a better chance to get in? Well, so let's say your kid. Let's just use this as an example. Like, let's say your kid goes to public school and wants to go to Duke. Well, here's the thing: you're using lacrosse as a tool to get in that door, okay? And so that recruiting job is more on you as a parent and your athlete. And in my recruiting course, I talk about this, like the fact that parents need to be part of that recruiting process. You're going to spend time putting together a highlight video. You're going to spend time reaching out to those coaches and going like, I want to come to. You're not going to sit back with lacrosse Tinder and hope someone swipes right on your goalie. I'm not going to let you do that, whether you go to public school or private school. All right. So, but then the idea is like, well, what about reclassifying? If your goalie is young, even if your goalie is not young. So I reclassified. I graduated high school at 19. Why? Because I wanted to be an All-American coming out of high school, and I had that ability, and two, I knew that it's going to give me another year to be bigger, faster, stronger, more emotionally stable as a person, and because I was not going to go to college and try to figure out life. That was me, right? Also, it allowed me to defer. So that there was the 92 Olympics. So I graduated in 91. There's 92 Olympics, and then the 94 Olympics, and I deferred college again. But the idea is like, again, if we're going to create an athlete that's going to succeed, have the best chance to succeed on campus that freshman year, well, I want an athlete who's got a little more miles on their tires, so that they don't get to school and all of a sudden like, woohoo, no parents, party, let's go, right? We don't want that, right? So now, if I take my athlete and we're going to reclassify them, that's really hard to do while you're in the same school. I'll be honest. Like, it's hard to kind of be grade 10 and say, and some public schools won't let it happen. I worked with an athlete in California a couple of years ago. The idea was that this kid was a senior and was about to graduate, and we were trying to get it so they could pull not just a PG year, but repeat. They were going to do grade 12 and grade 13. And the ISL school they were thinking wouldn't take them, but a prep school, a prep school in New York would take them for another grade 12 and grade 13 year, a PG year. However, the school system in California would not allow it because they had quotas and they got paid by the government for graduating kids percentage. And so if this kid all of a sudden didn't graduate, it was gonna hurt them, like their school in their system. Okay. So the idea in terms of if you're going to stay public to public, is it's best to do better before 8th grade. So Michael Straight, good point. Yeah, often do it before 8th grade, before high school. However, if you're going to switch, like, so let's say your kid's at public school and then you switch to a private school, that's a great time to reclassify. So it's kind of, so it can be done in public schools, but the idea is it's best to kind of do it before grade 8 into grade 9, especially if you're moving, relocating, anything like that, or sending your kid to go into a school. They're going to live with grandma and grandpa because they live in a district somewhere in a different state. These are things to consider, right? These are all things to consider. So the other option. So Joel writes, from my perspective, when I was in school, in college, the private school kids were more prepared than me, the public school kid. They had better study habits. Public school was more sink or swim. Private seemed more prepared to do the work. I would agree. I would totally agree. And so this is where the differentiation I was making was between the SAT solely. I have not seen, and this is just my experience. The SAT is a test that can be prepared for. Like there's technique involved with the SAT, and by the time Colton gets SAT age, we might see a wholesale change in SAT. To be honest, but the idea is that in terms of academic rigor, I'll say this, Joel. I think because my son was at private school and we actually took him out to put him in. Now he's not going to be pursuing athletics, but the idea was that we moved and we thought, okay, well, he's got kids and he's going to have local friends, local kids, whatever. That did not pan out with COVID. That was a big gong show. But the idea is that I have seen this. There is academic rigor, but there's not necessarily academic preparedness, because what you're talking about in terms of time management and project management, these are things that are not taught in school. They are demanded of kids, but those techniques are rarely taught to kids. And that's where you're better off going on like Skillshare.com or looking at master classes or taking a David Allen Getting Things Done course and being better schooled in how to do that. Like I remember I had a girlfriend, ridiculously smart, incredible study habits. Her father was a professor in college, and the like she had this system for taking notes, and what I didn't understand at the time was I read ridiculously slowly. Now we have the ability to get things on audio or video. Kids can learn. They can set a playback speed or 2 times speed and be hearing at a level that makes more sense to them because they're, when our brain is operating at like 600 words a minute, we're reading at like 200, at 100 words a minute, and we're speaking at 200. I took a faster reading course when I went to Stanford. And there were 2 girls in front of me that could read as fast as they could turn a page with a comprehension rate of 94%. And I was like, those, I had every swear word in the book. But that was a whole new world to me. Right. And so only when I learned that I was like a slow reader in my 30s, did I understand why academically I struggled at times. Okay. So you really have to think, you have to begin with the end in mind. And so for Joel, for Colton, like, I think he's on track to be a kid who could be a really good goalie. Probably, like if all thing goes well, he could be a Division 1 goalie. All right. So now, but that's where we go. Okay, we got to get the academic piece in order here. All right. We also have to have like some of the extracurriculars. But this is where time, energy, money, right? Time, energy, money. What do you want to throw at it? Now, for your ex there who commented about that, and this really bothered me. Like she made a comment about how private school kids, there's drug issues and all that. That's complete BS. All right. I drove down the street the other night and passed downtown past two hookers. I did not become one, nor did I sleep with one. All right. It rained in Canada today. I did not get wet, nor did I go seek the wetness. All right. And if it rained over my house, I go out with an umbrella. All right. Or a raincoat. So those types of comments really bug me. And you can probably hear the tone of my voice change instantly. I hate those comments because when you're, regardless of the conversation between you and your wife, to me, there's opportunity and there's distraction anywhere you go. Okay. And as a family, I have seen this firsthand. I have worked with families where every chance every expectation of bad shit happening, it happens to them. Okay. And so I am very much about school is what you make of it. All right. And to say that there's like that if your kid goes to private school, they're going to be exposed to better, like higher end drugs. That's cool. You know, like I've been doing this. I've been doing this since 2001. And I will tell you that of all the goalies I have worked with, of all the families I have worked with, not one of them has come back to me and said, "Oh, Jimmy, Karen got into their school of their dreams, but developed a drug problem." Or we transferred our kid to a private school, and they got exposed to crystal meth, and they're living naked down in a van by the river. No, it's all about parenting. It's all about focus. It's all about desire. And like I said, as an athlete in high school, I remember there were there was the party crowd, there was the stoner crowd, there was the drug crowd. I wasn't any part of it, right? Because I had different aspirations. And so when people say that, oh, if you go to private school, your kid's going to be, that's dumb. I'm sorry, dumb with a capital D and a capital U and a capital M. And I won't be super, a lowercase b. Right. But seriously, save that. And to say that to anybody who's got an aspiring kid and to throw their fears in that, I hate that. Hate it with a capital H. So here's the deal. If you have the resources, if you have, if you are going to an area where the private school lacrosse is better than the public school lacrosse, I might seek it out. However, in terms of recruiting, I would say it's irrelevant. I would say you're going to get like especially in the goalie position, your success in recruitment comes from your videotape and how relentless you are going after the coaches at the colleges that you want to go to. Right? That is it. And that's a parent and athlete thing. Right? Athletes get more and more busy and they get more and we want them to be kids a little bit, and have some social life. But I encourage my parents, I didn't used to do this. I changed literally in like the last year. I want my parents who are better time management people, who are better at project man, because getting recruited is all about project management. And when you're trying to manage your grades and your extracurriculars and getting on topic, that's a full-on project management skill that your kids have not been taught yet. So whether you go to public school or private school, I'll just reiterate what I said before. Yes, there's more academic rigor in private school. However, I think there's equally as poor project management preparation. Okay. And so, I guess I'll end on this, and this applies to everybody. You have to decide. So this might surprise a lot of people. as much as we are here for sport and we're here for lacrosse, and our kids have big, academic and our big athletic aspirations. Let's put it that way. You have to understand your perspective, your approach to college today, right? So if you're in your 40s and you have a career, and you look back on your, some of my parents listening to me now are still paying off their college loans, right? And so, and they're about to put their kid into college and adopt more loans. You have to look, I think, critically at the investment and the return on that investment. Okay, for a lot of my entrepreneurial parents, those who are in sales, who are like, I can sell this shit, I can sell other shit. Like, you have options. Others, families are like, dad's a doctor, mom's a doctor, kid's going to be a doctor, right? Other families, it's a little bit different. And I believe that school is a very expensive place to figure out what you want to do with your life. I really do. And so that's going to, people will be like, what? Now, we hope that lacrosse is going to open doors and get them to a place where they're going to learn and they're going to expose themselves to new learning and new people. But I'll tell you this, if they show up on campus and all they do is graduate in a degree in lacrosse, we did it wrong. All right? We did it wrong. All right? And that'll be a massive disappointment. But again, if you have the time, energy, and resources and you don't care, and you don't care where they go, and you just want them to have an experience and enjoy life and be part of a team and get to a good school, I get that too, right? And that's all. That all comes down to an individual family basis. So I don't want to see anybody mortgaging their future on that, because I think you have to think that through clearly. I worked with a family. This was 2 years ago. Transferred the athlete from one state to a $60,000 private high school tuition for 2 years. Okay. Not 60, but 120 total. But it ended up getting, the father was a doctor, ended up getting that athlete into a school where he could pursue a medical degree. And so, was the investment worth it for them? Yes. All right. It's an extreme example for sure, but it's something to consider. So David Amenhauser, a great question. At what point do you have the PG conversation? We missed the reclass and he's young and not going to leave his ISL school. Okay. So David, message me. Where are you? Like, what school are you at again? So you want to finish off at the existing school and then go PG. Yeah. You can go Deerfield or something like that. David, what year is he and where are you? Or if you want to message that to me, you can. If you want to private message me, that you just message me on Facebook, and that's cool. Belmont Hill. Gotcha. And what year is he? What grad year? Let's see if we can get that, because this is important. Oh, okay. 2026. So he just started. Right? He just started. He has his friends. You're all in. You don't want to leave. I get it. Okay. So, well, I would have it now. I would have it now, because on your radar, on your radar there, like, in New England, you got Deerfield. You've got all of the. What's the school? I can't remember right now. The other. Patriot League, right? Patriot League. I'm forgetting that. Yeah, Patriot League. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'm not thinking of it. What's the school? What's the what divisions? What? God, my Deerfield and all those other school. What are they in? Anyway, so in terms of the PG year, here's the thing. Yeah. So there's options. And David, I've run a little bit long here, but this is something where, let's look at it this way. If he's a June birthday, right? And so that's 6 months into the year. And if you take my advice and you start going like, okay, if we're going to design the perfect lacrosse player to show up on a college campus, Now, David, but the one thing here is like if your kid's a stud, like an absolute stud, um, then a college may want them out of it. So I had this experience with a Canadian kid where they got recruited, and so they're a young Canadian kid, and I was like, this kid needs another year. And in Canada, with box lacrosse, what was kind of interesting, I proposed, I said, all right, why don't you graduate high school and then wait a year, get bigger, faster. Now there's some you got to, every year things change a little bit. We got to watch the limitations of, like, because you have a window between when you graduate and when your clock starts ticking and you have to get on campus. That's another deal. And I'm working on that in my recruiting course, but there's some things to just kind of keep an eye on there. But that's where reclassifying early is better, because you're just in front of it, and it's and you have the excuse like, no, he's young, we wanted to hold him back, it's whatever. So if you're at Belmont Hill, you can reclassify him and just still keep doing those classes, right? Like, so let's say he's a grade 9, but he's doing grade 10 classes, right? Or whatever, right? So you're in that mode, and then all he's doing is he's getting prepared to take extra classes, right? So now what might be strange for him is, and this is easier for athletes, is that his buddies will graduate, but he will then have all his lacrosse buddies, and his lacrosse teammates. He's still there. So listen, I always say this, for the people who want to make it happen, there are options for you. For people who just want to sit back and play by the rules, and they're like, oh, no, my kid's got to graduate on time. Like, no, like, I'm sorry, this conversation is not for you. All right. And if you begrudge the people who do that, then that's fine. But when your athlete gets on the field of play and it's game day, who's going to survive? Right. And so that's just something to consider. All right. And people think, oh my God, that's harsh. That's harsh. But you can, there's options there. Yeah. Michael Strakes, that's a great point. Michael, you are all over this stuff. Like, we should do a conversation with you some week. Okay. But I hope that makes sense. So Joel Rose, I hope you're not divorced when this is over. I'm kidding. But, and I know, this conversation butts up against so many beliefs that parents have, beliefs that moms have, beliefs that business owners versus employees have, people who their beliefs about the college experience and not like, I know I always surprise people when I say this. They feel like they think it's crazy coming from me, but I think you have to look at the investment for university differently now than we used to. Although, if your kid's a stud, if academically they're good, and they can open all the doors, opportunities come to you. So you can either look at this experience and go like, oh, it's really restrictive, or no, like you can say like, shit's going to happen for us. All right. And it will. It will. It totally will. All right. So when you run up against people who say like, oh, I can never do that. No, why not? I got like right now I'm working with a very talented goalie out in Ohio. And this kid is a stud, and he's going to kill it. And he's a kid that could PG a year. But to finish that story about the Canadian kid, we had him reclassify. Okay. I wanted him to, I thought, let's stay home. You can work out for a season, become bigger, faster, stronger, and still play junior A box lacrosse and have plenty of lacrosse talent. Like, you're not going to lose your field lacrosse talent. He could even practice and travel. But then the idea was the school that recruited him, Division I school, 50% scholarship, said, no, we want him on campus. And so what they did was they redshirted him, but they got him on campus because I think they were fearful he would transfer or somebody else would get a hold of him, even though he had signed a letter of intent and things like that. So that was their strategy, was to at least get him on campus and do that. And so whatever, you just got to be available to open to all the opportunities, and that'll help you. That'll make your decision. But the decision is yours and yours alone. Okay. As a family, it is yours and yours alone. And, but if you take my approach of designing the best possible athlete to stand on campus that freshman year, mentally, emotionally, physically, for me, no, you can't do this anymore. But because of my Olympic experience, I was going to be a 23-year-old freshman at the University of Notre Dame. And when I did my campus tour and they flew me out there and I spent 2 days on campus and had dinner with the team and all that stuff and got to see, but I stayed with the freshmen, which is a mistake. And I saw all these kids who'd never been away from home. There's like pizza boxes and CD cases. And I swear I saw some panties on the floor. And I was like, I'm too old for these kids. Like, this was a step back for me as a person, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Athletically, I would have kicked ass. And I was looking forward to bringing a national championship to Notre Dame, right? But I had outgrown it, which is kind of interesting. Okay, but we want your athlete to be mentally, emotionally, physically ready to succeed that freshman year, not get distracted, know where they want to be, know they want to be on that campus, know they want to win a national championship, know that they're all in and they're a leader on the field. That's what the coach wants. That's what you want as a parent. And your kid then is going to be better able to withstand the distractions that come with stepping on a college campus. All right. Right. The frat parties, the alcohol, the team houses, right? The girls, the boys, like whatever, right? All of that. We want them to be bigger, faster, stronger, to be able to stand all of that and ready for anything, right? That's the goal. So I hope this makes sense. Okay. That's a great question, Joel. Okay. And I went way longer than I planned on doing that tonight. So I hope that helps. And if your wife wants to come over here and shoot me, she can't get across the border yet. There's a 11-day quarantine at a hotel at her own expense. All right. Enjoy. All right, guys, thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com and check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.